like that as well.
When you say articles, do you mean your own articles or something?
Yeah, just like, I mean, all the posts that I'm making. I don't have a better word for them because they're obviously a bit all over the place
Okay.
sometimes.
Okay, Streamlink is in tutoring. It's going up now.
Cool. Yep. Um, got it. I think I'm live. So the one problem at the moment is that they're not all in one place. So the main thing, so if you click on the top notes under tutorials, that has links to everything else in it. So then there's a homework link and the link to the analyzing lies thing, and they're both at the top.
I think I might be confused about which one to click.
Oh, sorry, the Notes 27 tutorial.
Uh-huh.
Um,
And also the
yep.
homework?
Yeah. So there's that one too. Yep. So the link at the top of the notes one.
Oh,
Um,
homework link. I see.
um,
Okay. Okay, so how did stuff go since last time?
uh, really well, I feel like. So didn't have like there was some uh rental lease stuff like annual fire inspection thing that happened. So I spent a bit of time cleaning up the place. So I didn't have as much time to work on stuff as I wanted, but I feel like the time that I did spend was really, really good time. So I have started going through the analyze lies or analyzing lies material, which I'm finding immediately like it was really obvious how engaging it was for me from the get-go by comparison. So moving on to that was definitely a good idea. I ended up sort of, well, I've got a bit of a plan about how I wanted to go about that stuff, which I posted to FI and is on the under the analyzing lies section of my site too. Um, uh, One thing I had like some issues with that, but I think they're all soluble and stuff. The I feel like my analysis went really well. The one thing that I did notice a lot was, or I did that stood out to me was after I started watching the sort of from about 30 minutes on in the first video where you actually start doing analysis, or like reading the quote and talking about it a bit more. Um, uh, After that point, um, what am I thinking? So I didn't get around to doing pass 2 and 3 um, yet, but I feel like I did really well. Oh yeah, the thing I wanted to say was that I read into some of the mistakes or bad quotation things. So both the title and the ellipsis were on that first quote, the burner quote, were things that I spent time on. And in the video, you find out that it was a bad quote and the ellipsis was like incorrect, like it was incorrect quotation, and that the title was maybe added by the person who posted it as well, um, which is like not good.
Right.
So anyway, I just thought it was interesting that I read so much into it. I guess because the point is to be analyzing it. But it sort of makes an interesting point about the importance of quotation because I would otherwise, if I didn't know that, like misattribute faults to Burner instead of attributing them to the guy who actually posted that quote.
Oh, I see. You're
Um,
saying that you analyzed the title a bunch, and then
Not
you
a
found.
bunch, but I did like spend a bit, like the first few bits talking about it. Um,
Right. So then you find out that the evidence doesn't necessarily mean what it appeared to.
exactly, yeah. And then the last two paragraphs were about the ellipsis, which actually start by saying, I don't know why there's an ellipsis at the end. So I liked that I had the, like, it was obvious, or it seems like I noticed that it was out of place, um,
Right.
as
That's
such.
good.
So I have a few comments and speculation on that I wrote down somewhere, but I'm not exactly sure where. They're in one of the comments that I had. Um, there might be in, I'll just check, there's a list of stuff that I wrote as well. just like a list of ideas that a really loose thing that I was putting together. Oh yeah, it's curious how much I read into title and thing. If I wasn't, or if it wasn't critical rationalism, I think I would have been more skeptical of the quoting quality, or the quality of the quoting.
Critical rationalists don't know anything special about coding.
I realize that far more now. I think I took it a bit for granted because of the quality on FI, and I didn't separate them enough in my head conceptually
Oh,
to pick up on that beforehand.
yeah, that is definitely unrelated to other critical rationalist groups.
That's one reason, by the way. Like I remember a discussion about critical fallible, like is in the name stuff, from maybe 2018.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, I'm sort of glad that I went and searched the archives and I see that you've been using it, which I'm sort of happy about because I think that lumping like FI in with the rest of critical rationalism is not good. There are important disagreements that are like substantial disagreements that mean that we should separate the two. Um, but I
Yeah.
also really like the name. I think it's like quite fitting.
Yeah, the main problem with the name is it's too fancy, like it is like a bit overly prestigious. But I think that it's impossible to make a name that's good in like every way. You have to put up with some issue because
I agree.
society like wants too many conflicting things, like you can't please everyone.
Yep.
So
Um,
I think it's okay and I'm just gonna use it anyways, but I tend to dislike prestige stuff. So even though this is pretty mild as an example, I've been using the name Fallible Ideas for a while, which is more casual. On the other hand, Fallible Ideas has the downside that it does not instantly communicate that it's a philosophy. I think it's not even an ism.
yeah. I also think it sort of makes sense to talk about uh, like FI as a community and the instance of of the tradition, like the living tradition, as different from like the school of thought, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, cool. So, in terms of,
Okay. So tangentially, you mentioned
yep,
the rental thing with like fire safety or something, taking up
uh,
time.
yeah, they had to come in and check the fire alarms work and stuff.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that's a good example of why time buffers are important, like Goldrat talks about.
Yep. Yeah. No, definitely. Um, my time management stuff is I've been thinking like about it in the background, um, increasingly over the tutorials. I actually have like a real problem with sleep management, particularly. Like the last 2 nights, I haven't been able to get more than like 4 hours, 5 hours of sleep, which is much less than I would like. Um, Part of that is like last night, uh, I had like so many different ideas and stuff that I couldn't like quiet my mind type thing, like going to sleep. Like I just kept thinking of more stuff that I wanted to write down.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but I don't think it was like bad in the sense that like uh, so one of the things that I wanted to talk about that's in the it's in not the homework one, the other document, tutorial 27 notes, was uh like a little or a thing that came out of a conversation with Justin in the tutoring channel last night. Um, but I don't want to talk about it at the beginning because uh, I've got an idea for how we can do like a regular thing about stuff like this so that we don't get distracted by it. Um, the just to quickly cover off the other things. So I wrote in the homework thing. I've got two sort of like writing exercise samples that I did want to talk about. The second one I failed at, but I think I have a good understanding of why and what to do differently. Um, so yeah, so I guess three. So there's two writing examples. There's the analyzing lies stuff, and then there's this other idea that I have, this quick check thing that I put in the notes. Um, okay, so that's all a bit disorganized, Max. What are we? Um,
Right,
Oh
so
yeah, and there
which
was
thing do you want to look at first?
um, so let's go with the tutorial 27 notes, and there's two things there. There's sort of like feedback reflection-y section, and then quick check. Um, so the gist of the feedback thing is oh, there's a link. It's turned the one into a link as opposed to a footnote. Um, but yeah, but basically, like the last few days since starting the analyzing lies stuff has been um like a big change in terms of like mindset and how I'm feeling about things, much like for the better. Um, I'm it's the you talk about in the overreaching article, you talk about like powering up as a thing,
Uh-huh.
which is sort of a pretty good, yeah, description of how I'm feeling at the moment. So um, anyway, yeah, I wanted to mention that explicitly. The second thing there, this quick check idea, is sort of like for a like if I collect things that in a sense that I don't want to spend necessarily too much time on, but I want to make sure that I'm not making any big obvious mistakes.
Yeah.
So sort of like low effort stuff, like checking to, yeah, just that sort of stuff. Um, I feel like it's fairly
Okay, yeah, I get the
intuitive, maybe.
idea.
So, and then if we have like, if we know what the list of quick checking stuff is at the beginning of the session, then we can allocate like 10, 15 minutes or something at the end, um, so we don't get distracted. Um, so there's those two. Um, so the writing exercises are probably easier to talk about first because they're smaller, and then analyzing lies, um, session one, is probably a good thing to spend most of our time on, I imagine.
Okay.
Um, cool. So the writing stuff is in the homework link. Um, I tried something different this time than, or I sort of developed the idea I had last time about doing time limit stuff.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that I think that's really good is that when you limit yourself time-wise, so there's two main things that I notice out of it. The first is that you don't have time to dick around with like getting ideas perfect. So you have to,
Yeah.
keep writing, otherwise you run out of time. So you don't get stuck. And the second thing is that if you are getting stuck, it makes it really obvious that it's too hard a question, or you need to do other stuff first. That you either need to learn new skills or learn more about the topic or whatever else. Um, so
Yeah.
uh, the first question that I wanted to answer was how can you write to better communicate to people generally? Um, I came up with that actually. So both of these I wrote in the last hour. Um, I wanted to do more, and I was gathering some questions, but yeah, time management, sleep stuff. Um, I think the first one went really well. What
Okay.
I'm doing, by the way, is I've started using Live Split as a
Yeah.
like a timing thing, which is
Yeah,
really
I'm
nice.
familiar.
So you get like yeah, little timer with whatever. Oh, that's not doing it because it's not saved my settings. But so that's really cool. And I can have it on the edge of the keyboard. I was using like the Google timer, but it's a pain when you're changing the sections. Um, so yeah, so my rough breakdown of stuff was like 2 minutes planning, 10 minutes writing, 3 minutes editing. Um, the main body there is everything I wrote. Um, I started reading through it again in the editing phase. The editing phase was not long enough to do any proper editing, um, like just turning the start of sentences into capitals was like 45 seconds, and I only got two-thirds of the way through. So I need to maybe adjust that a bit. But what I did like was that I didn't substantially change things uh, the when I was editing. I did clarify some stuff in the first paragraph, but on the whole, I think the structure came through. I think this is also a really good example, or at least I feel like it's the best example I've written of outlines via the topic sentences of paragraphs. Um,
Okay. Well, I'll start there then and see how that comes out before I read
cool.
anything else. So, when we want to communicate, When you want to communicate better, okay, there's a typo, but no big deal. When we want to communicate better, we're saying we want to make sure the ideas we write down are understandable and understood by other people. Okay, seems like a reasonable topic. You should consider at a high level how you're going to structure things. I guess things means writing. You should
Yeah.
consider what your audience already knows. You should not be too concerned with what you put down initially. Okay. I assume because you can edit. It's hard
Yep.
to tell exactly where that paragraph's going, but yeah. Seems like a separate point. Alright. You should make sure everything you write has a purpose. Remember, writing can be fun. Yeah, that seems pretty outliney. Each of them seem like a distinct topic. Okay, so put ideas down, explain yourself, complete sentences. One idea per sentence. Build up ideas and snowball. Planning. No run-on sentences, audience, goal. To communicate about it, there's some sort of typo here, it's a little confusing. I really understand
Oh, I
how you
didn't
judge how
try
well you
and
did.
with the notes, I deliberately didn't fix typos and stuff because there's only 2 minutes, so I was just focusing on getting as much out of my head as possible.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't know exactly what it meant,
Yeah, okay. No, that's cool.
but okay, their ability to understand is how you judge how well you did. Okay, that part makes sense.
Yep.
Okay, don't stop if you got stuck. Sounds a little weird, like, because if you get stuck, that means you don't know how to continue,
Yes, yeah.
in some
Um,
sense.
the so I'm not sure if that will make sense after reading the rest of the article.
Yeah.
Um,
I know there are ways you can
yeah,
break it up. Like, you can be stuck in one way and not another way. You can keep brainstorming even though you're stuck on something. Or, like, yeah, you can get stuck on how to explain one thing, so then you keep writing some other aspect of the topic. Like, switch paragraphs or something is the thing you can do.
yep.
Okay, you can add a timer. Yeah, people, you have to be careful with timers sometimes for some people. They can like feel time pressured and have trouble like performing under pressure. There are some dangers there, but if it's working well for you, that's good. Um, Being able to do stuff in a reasonable amount of time is like part of the goal. That's what you want to aim for in the future, is be able to get stuff done like reasonably quickly. And um, it in order to achieve that, you have to automate a lot of stuff and like have good habits and like make fewer errors in the first place instead of fixing everything eventually very slowly and massive re-editing. Like if it takes 10 editing passes to get something to work, you should power up more first.
Yep.
And yeah, if you can't like even do it somewhat in a short time, then you should probably learn something else first. So there's timer makes sense in some ways. So it's working for you, that's great. Um yeah, don't focus too much on one thing. Consider what your readers know, what's appropriate for your readers. They don't. So I guess the focus is on communicate. Sometimes you're trying to teach them something, so like the point is for them to learn something,
Yeah,
but
what I meant there
you don't want them to
was
need to learn like extra things other than your focus if you're teaching.
yeah, yeah, outside of what you're trying to explain, they shouldn't need to go get more prerequisite knowledge, was what I meant by that.
Yeah, if they do, it's hard and like most of them won't do it.
Yeah. Or there should be like a really solid purpose for why, or something like that. Like it's really particular to a, a topic or whatever.
They should understand what you say. Too much detail is bad. I'm not following the so because like you could have a bunch of detail and they could understand that. These don't seem to like contradict.
Yeah, no, I could have omitted the so that doesn't
Okay. So just yeah. So detail varies. It's really goal dependent. Like, how does this detail help with your goal? Or in other words, are you optimizing a non-bottleneck? You can think of details as optimizations and consider, will this optimization slash detail actually increase throughput?
Yep.
Okay, so now the paragraph, or the writing, any paragraphs. And we want to make sure the idea is understandable and understood. You need to be able to read what you wrote once through and have a fairly good idea of the structure and content. Yeah, not needing to double back is generally pretty desirable. Partly because people mostly won't do it. They won't recognize very well that they're not understanding, or they'll just assume they can't understand and automatically give up or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they usually don't go into studying mode. It takes like reasonably specific context to get people to like reread things.
Yep.
That's an ongoing problem on like FI. Like, even when there are quotes, people often don't reread the quoted context and then get like lost because they misremember.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I
No, I
reread
know.
things frequently when I try to have discussions.
Yeah, I do that to an extent. Um,
Yeah, I'd like if they weren't going to reread it or like take responsibility for knowing what it says, just don't quote it. But they feel that they have
yeah,
to quote it because if they don't quote it, people will say, "Well, you're ignoring context," which is true, but so then they put the quotes, but they don't pay attention to them, so they're faking paying attention to context sometimes.
yeah. I think it's okay to like say to be like to not quote it and reflect, that you're hedging or being looser in your writing. But then if someone says that the quote is important, then that's like a legit criticism. So you should go get the quote and read it. That might not be as good as just quoting it and reading it up front, but there's like if you do it honestly, then it's pretty easy to correct that mistake.
Okay, you need to build up your new idea using simple ideas that they already know or have mastered. Readers will be able to follow and understand everything. Okay. That's like a little over optimistic, but at least they'll have a better chance.
Yes, yeah.
You might think you already do this, but if you're reading this, you probably have room to improve. I don't know why it's if you're reading this. Like,
Um, yeah, I would have reworded this had I had more time. I put it down something like that down originally, and then, um, in fact, I didn't really edit it much. Um, but um, but yeah, I wanted a way to introduce the question. That was really why that was there, because I wanted to like ask a question to lead into the rest of
okay,
the
so
of the
just
thing.
strike this. You might think you already do, but you probably have room to improve.
Yeah.
And that's like good enough. Okay, so you should consider how to structure. Put ideas on paper, you can put them in a regular and consistent way that matches what people expect. Not everything important in the first paragraph. Introduce new ideas through the entire article. Build up. Don't use confusing language, don't do it all at once. Won't even read the rest if they get lost. Yeah, that's the thing. It depends a lot on why they're reading it. Most of the time people are reading stuff, their goal isn't actually learning, and that's why they keep reading when they're not learning.
Like it's entertainment or whatever else.
Yeah,
A
entertainment
lot
is
of
one of them.
yeah, a lot of like pop bloggy stuff, even on concepts like, complex concepts like machine learning or whatever, strike me as this, where they're pretty insubstantial, but they're designed to be poppy, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of it is sort of like feeling like a member of a certain social group that is prestigious, like the smart people. and feeling like you're one of them and that you're reading their stuff, and you don't have to actually learn it to pick up some like common words and phrasings, and then you can read other articles in the future and recognize things and say, I read about that before, or I remember that word, or I remember that concept or something. And that feels like engagement to people, even though it's different than actually understanding the stuff. And it lets you signal and be signaled to when you talk to people. You can signal tribe membership for people who read about AGI and know stuff about it. You can recognize other people's signals that they're part of that group, and you don't actually have to understand what you're talking about to do that.
Yep. It's like you're understanding meta communication, but not communication. Like,
Yeah,
not
that's
the
part of
content
it.
of the words, but the context of the words, sort of thing.
Yeah, like commonly used words, common style, etc. You can pick that up. Okay, what does your audience know? Give credit they deserve. They don't want basics repeated, they want new ideas. I think people are like overly impatient and intolerant about that stuff in general.
As in people when they're reading things are overly intolerant.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
they're sort of like, give me the meat, and um, usually their grasp of the basics they're trying to review is quite inadequate.
Yes, yeah.
So there's stuff people will say like, I already learned that, don't tell me about it, or stuff they don't understand. That's quite common. So
Yeah,
their concept of new ideas is like literally stuff that does not build on ideas they actually have. Like they're trying to skip steps.
yeah, yep.
So that's one of the things that makes it not work very well. Okay, so be careful with negatives when you have two or more. There's
Yeah,
three
yep.
here. That's a thing that you can like make a habit, is just if there are at least two negatives, get wary, be careful.
Yeah, I feel like there are cases where it's okay, but they have to be really specific. Like, you've got to be like you have to be talking, you need to have to be talking about like double negatives as opposed to about the normal positive. Um, Sort of like instead of saying you should do this, like you should not do that is a more general sort of statement, but most of the time we're not being that specific. Yeah, so I mean, maybe to think about that, what I'm saying is like telling them things that they already know is okay sometimes. Like people want to get stuff, but it's, the synchronization is a good reason to do it.
I think you just have an extra negative. Like I think you meant like this. It doesn't mean you shouldn't say things they already know. I think you meant that rather than say
Oh
things they
yeah,
already
yeah.
don't know.
So yeah, so it was so complicated that I put an extra negative in there. I tricked
Yeah.
myself.
Okay. There's a standard foundation. If you're too simple, they get bored. If you presume too much, they get lost. So it's important what your audience said. Yeah, okay. And this is in the correct paragraph, like it matches the topic sentence. I forgot what paragraph I was on, so I checked. And it was, in fact, the right one. It wasn't the structure one anymore. So
Yep.
it fits properly, so that's good. Okay, so what you put down initially. Make mistakes, fix them. Keep pace if you want to write fast, and leave editing to the end. So this depends. I do some editing while I'm going along. I don't
One,
usually like stop and edit and like try to optimize things very much, but I'll fix stuff that I notice in real time as I'm writing, usually.
so I think I'm probably predisposed to edit less than ideal when doing this sort of stuff. And the example is actually like these two sentences, like I've spent 6.5 minutes, and then the one where I mention, what is it, 3 minutes or something. Um, yeah, where I've allocated 3 minutes after finishing writing. Um, so I put the clause about I've allocated 3 minutes. That was earlier, and then I realized and then I started writing something about 6.5 minutes, and I rearranged it as I was at that point in writing, and it was a big chunk of time relative to how much I got out by not editing. So in something like that, like maybe the better thing to do would be to just like do like star 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 or something to make it obvious that I want to come back to this point in editing, and then just move on, because it was like 30
Yeah,
seconds to rearrange that, as opposed to the amount of words I could write in 30 seconds was like, it's 50 words or something. So much higher yield at that point in time.
yeah, you have to be careful. It depends how much flow you have. Like, if you have stuff to say immediately, then getting it
Yeah.
out before you forget can be best. Whereas if if you're not in quite as much of a rush, then you have more opportunity to fix a few things, more of like a leisurely pace.
Yeah.
If you don't have anything immediately on your mind that you need to write before forgetting. Ideas keep coming, yeah. So not getting stuck, like keeping some flow. Yeah, so one of the main things I'm noticing when I'm reading this is it's informal. It doesn't
Mm.
read like a college essay or an academic paper or trying to imitate those or any of that kind of thing.
One thing that
And
does strike me is, oh yeah, sorry.
yeah, when people turn their formality off, they often get a bit more coherent and easy to understand and stuff. It tends to help a bit.
Um, One thing that does, so just as you said that, it reminded me of learning essay structure in high school and being taught stuff like three primary sentences in the paragraph, which is sort of like point, uh, reasoning, conclusion type thing. And looking at them, while some of the time I ask questions at the end, but uh, it's topic sentence, bulk explanation examples, etc., and then either like leading into the like next sort of stuff, like with conclusion and lead in, or just conclusion. And so it's sort of interesting that the summary or the sort of like structure is actually really similar to like high school essay stuff, but no one writes like that in this sort of thing, even though it's easier to read and much easier to write. Um, you can still have, you can make the same points. Um, yeah, just sort of a curious thing.
Yeah, this came out okay, I think.
I was really happy with it. Like by comparison to the stuff I was writing the other day,
Hmm.
and last week, I feel like it's, yeah, much, much better.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you can do stuff like this and you do this 50 times, you'll definitely improve and it'll get easier.
So there's a little bit of reflection there, which is about editing. I
Yeah, I
tried
saw
this
that.
question next, and I mean, after the list there's 3 lines. The third one is, one important part of, and then just blank. And that was where I realized like this was too hard a question. So one thing I'm actually really happy about with that is that like I realized that early. I didn't try and spend the full 10 minutes. Um, I like it became obvious to me, and it was like, okay, stop doing this. And a much better thing to do, I think, was to spend time like reflecting on it, which what do you call it? I think is actually like much higher quality in terms of the
Yeah,
ideas in the
that
reflection than it is in the other stuff.
recognizing when something's not going to work is definitely important. Being willing to abort things is good. That's like with the Mises paragraph video. It seems like aborting that sooner would have worked out better, for example. Have you read this article, by the way?
So not all of it. I've read some of it. Usually one of the problems I run into reading your stuff is rabbit holes. Um, like I'll particularly because there's lots of links and stuff, and I'll like and then I get on another article that I also am enjoying reading or whatever else. So there's a lot of things that I sort of need to come back to at some point.
Yeah, I just mention it because it's sort of what you were talking about, some of the same material. Okay, community, philosophy.
So that's formed because TCS slash Fabrica Reality list to BOI list to FI is what that meant. It's
Yeah,
very
that's
symbol heavy.
vaguely in the ballpark. Missing ARR and a few others, but PR living tradition. I'm not sure exactly what this means. It means sort of like a direct link, like Joe knew
Uh,
Bob.
yeah, so you've talked about like being able to actually like converse with people who come up with ideas, like with Zaz, for example, as opposed to like Popper. Like you never got the opportunity to talk to Popper, but you did get the opportunity to talk to Zaz.
Yeah, so I've talked with Popper associates like Agassi, but it
Hmm.
really didn't make that much difference. So effectively, David learned Popper from books, and I learned from David plus books. So there's this effectively there's a break there, even though there has been some contact that was with people who knew Popper.
Yeah, I did want to check about that whether um like DD had any actual communication with Popper or not. But it sounds like no.
I think he had a small amount, just not much though. I think it
Yeah,
might have
okay.
been physics related, if I remember correctly. So it didn't make a significant difference. So the answer here is there's some link, but it didn't really matter. It's not where much of the value or knowledge is coming from.
Yeah. So one thing, by the way, I'm not sure that like I feel like my brainstorming is sort of fine. Um, because there's like I was gonna post a thing. Um, so
Yeah, are these
sorry.
both 2-minute brainstorms? Like, did it actually follow the time? Because it seems like a lot for
Yeah, yeah,
2 minutes.
yeah. No, that's so with
Yeah,
the
that's good then.
yeah. Um, I didn't have much problem with the brainstorming. It was definitely slower with what is fallible ideas question, which was maybe my first hint. But uh, yeah. Um, um, so yeah, so I just typed that out while we're talking about something else. Um, but yeah, there's like a lot of analyzing lies content. So I don't want to get too stuck on this because I feel like I handled it fairly well. The commentary is maybe the more important thing to check in that there's more content about that, and yeah, I feel like it's
Yeah,
all stuff that is at
you
least
have
in the
to be
direction.
careful attributing merits to the community. Like all the people vary, and they're all
Yeah,
individuals and stuff. And there are some things that encourage honesty, but they're not fully effective for all the people all the time or anywhere near that.
yeah. Um,
Yeah, it's partly the speed can be other things too, like if you ask me about chess, it'll take me longer. Doesn't mean lack of knowledge, it means I haven't used it for a while. Like it takes a while to remember it. Some things are
yeah.
more active than others. error rate, I guess.
Yeah, yep.
Okay, so basically generic overreaching comments here.
Yeah, I guess the reason that I feel like so they're important for me because I was putting them out fairly fast and as a reaction to the thing that I just done, which I
Right.
like
So it's getting
because
more
it's
intuitive.
exactly, yeah.
I wouldn't categorize gold rat under econ, but that's fairly minor.
I didn't know where to put him as opposed to just a category of his own. 'Cause it's sort of yeah, it's not like I guess what you might call hardcore economics like Mises.
Okay, so you
So
want to look at the quick check next?
yeah, what I've got under there. So normally with a quick check thing, like the only reason to do that now is because it's relevant to analyzing lies. Normally I'd say that we should do something like that at the end. So this is the start of, or it's where I think you need to read from, though much later in the conversation there's context
Yeah,
stuff that
so
goes
Discord
earlier.
has some sort of sed thing built in.
Oh yeah, yep. Said is in SED. Yep.
Yeah.
So that's the topic of the next like chunk of thing in Discord.
Yeah, there's a lot of social dynamics there. Like this this message is entirely social dynamics. It's not contributing like utilitarian meaning to
Yeah.
the discussion.
So I come up with two explanations for that. Um,
I'm not entirely sure what you mean, but I think you might mean that you discovered the feature late rather than early. Is
um,
that it?
yeah, I mean, I'm not sure whether it's a new feature or not. I sort of presumed that it was new because I didn't know about it, and
I don't think it's
like,
new.
yeah, okay, that's really cool. Because I've done like the said S thing for like before I started using Discord regularly. One thing that might be the case is that I haven't done it at a time when it's been after the message that I've like it's been like two messages ago because that doesn't. Oh well, no, because it didn't. Anyway, that's not important. Hello, Evan.
Um, it's actually the type of feature that I think tends to get added early in life cycles of programs. It's like a power user feature that the
Mm,
early programmers who can actually create significant new software, the kind of thing they would appreciate and maybe add. It doesn't
like
seem
they
like
put
the
it in
kind
for
of thing
themselves.
that gets added when there's a large user base and they're focusing on like what do most of our users want, and it's not going to be this.
Yeah, yep.
So I'd be surprised if it was a recent feature for that reason. But I also vaguely remember knowing about it like a while ago. Yeah,
Oh,
so
sorry about that.
yeah, the word wrapping. Anyways,
It's not. Yep.
um, it is social. Social is a problem. You do a variety of social things, but it's a big it's a big topic. It's a complicated topic. You can't learn everything at once, so I mostly suggest trying to avoid it unless there's like a pressing problem. for the time being.
Yeah, so I am roughly the same sort of thing. It's going to be easier to look in Discord, by the way. I can actually, I've got the thing up here. So, yeah, so that's why I say like I don't feel bad or guilty, just unsure, in that it's not like a thing that I felt like was really important to understand then. And because I had a place that I go look for stuff next, I thought that was sort of okay because when I did want to prioritize it, I had direction. So the initial thing that I was going to ask you about was like, was it a good direction? Did I find something meaningful? I think I answered the first, or I answered the meaningful part with later
You mean
conversation.
was this log meaningful?
Oh no, as in like was picking up on like that line. Oh man, now I feel out of the loop, stick out tongue.
Oh yes, this is
Yeah,
a meaningful line. I agree with that.
yeah. Um,
It's looking at the world in terms of like what groups of people are doing and how you compare to the group, sort of. It reminds me slightly of people make a big deal out of discovering new science as opposed to learning science that's already known. And there are some differences, but like the learning or discovery process is kind of fundamentally the same either way. And you should be able to find it like enjoyable and notable if you're figuring out science stuff. The fact that someone else did it before doesn't like change it terribly.
yep.
So like the way people get so stuck on comparing to others, like screw up science for them. Eliza Yudkowsky wrote some things about that in the sequences somewhere.
So that was the first explanation that I came up for why for like what was the meaning behind it. Um, so yeah, if you want to open it on yours, there's the link to Discord above and below the chat log.
Oh,
Otherwise, you can scroll up because it's not too far.
it
I don't
doesn't
know.
work
Yeah,
right.
it didn't work right for me because it asked me to sign in like that, which
Oh,
is
you
annoying.
can do copy link, and then you can click on it. After sending it as a message, you can click on it, but you have to send it to the channel or something first.
Yep, that's annoying, but understandable. Oh, you might be able to put it in search. I wonder if that works.
I don't know. You can put it in a different channel, like off topic, but
No, it doesn't work in search. I think you can send to yourself as well.
yeah. So, anyways, try to watch out for problems that are causing like a significant impact, and otherwise focus attention elsewhere, preferably. I think.
Yep. In this case, I spent some time on it. So there's another few hundred words about that, where I use the same techniques from analyzing lies about like this thing. So I sort of like find a difference, talk about what it means at a high level because I don't know what it means at a low level, and then like explain what it sort of was doing, like why would I say those things, and then work backwards from there. And so there's yeah, one of the things I found was probably like a meme about wanting to be the person who discovers knowledge as opposed to being happy that it's already out there being used. So that's like anti-knowledge and stuff like that. So I feel like this sort of stuff is good to be able to identify, particularly because it means that I know like that there's a source of bad ideas that I still hold, and that I'm starting to recognize when that source is active. Um, and then the other thing that I thought it probably meant was to do with relative social status. in that when someone discovers something that you already know, or sorry, when you discover something that someone else already knows, then it can feel like your relative social status is diminished, and then we have a bad reaction to that, or something along those lines. Um, yeah. One thing that I noticed about the change in my perspective was that I said, uh, like one of the lines was like, "Oh man, analyzing lies already coming in handy. Can't believe I'm this excited to find dishonesty in a thing I said 5 minutes ago." Um, so that's down a, yeah, I think it's on the next, like it's about a page down from that. Yep. So there we go.
Okay, so do you want to go into this more or move on to the next thing?
I'm not sure that we're gonna have like find too much in this. Like it's um, in terms of I feel like I've done a decent job. If we uh, are interested predominantly in like the analyzing lie stuff in more detail, then there's a lot more stuff in the other in the start of my other analysis. So that might be because that's what I'm going to be working on uh, later and continuing the video and stuff. That's probably the higher usefulness thing.
Okay, my
Um,
presumption is I could probably find a lot of stuff here, but let's move on anyways.
yep. I can't I can use other people's material to judge my analyzing lie stuff, but I can't for that self-analysis. So because I found some stuff, I think that sort of like I've taken it as far as I need to, in that I know like two bad ideas, staticky memes type thing. Um, and I've got like multiple directions to go in, and I know how to spot a thing that I didn't know how to spot before, etc. So yeah, this stuff is
Well,
probably more useful.
okay, that sounds good. Alright, so it starts with this burner quote. Notes on spoilers. Force and power, let us assume. Type of personality.
Yeah, so this was the stuff that I like had hints about beforehand, just
Yeah, I
because
got
of
it.
watching the video. Yep.
Okay. Alright, so now you're doing analysis. Individuals put against the mob, is it adversarial? Is the mob anyone other than us? Is this a false dichotomy? I think there are real conflicts here, but it's reasonable to consider. Yeah, I think a part of the title is that they're implying that critical rationalism is individualist. Like, they make a jump. They say individualists and the mobs who have like X and Y, and then they say, can Z survive, right? Um, like,
Oh,
this
I think
is prima facie, this is kind of strange, right?
yes, yeah. That was one of the things that occurred to me. It seemed such a non sequitur, like to the article, which is one of the reasons I was like, all right, we're just like I'm not going to read anything into this now. We'll come back and evaluate it because people write titles like clickbaity type titles that or things that pose questions that get resolved throughout the thing, even if it seems ridiculous to start with or whatever else.
Yeah. So this is making you connect X with Z in order to understand the sentence, which
Mm.
is, um, X is a good thing, so that is like forcing a particular interpretation just to like follow along. It's like biasing.
Oh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
So one thing I found it's on my screen. I found a text copy of the the essay, I think.
Yeah, I had
Unless
one. It's probably linked somewhere in the thread.
yeah, I remember the book one you had. I'm just linking this now. So that's not even the start of the paragraph. Like there's before that, there's here is the explanation. So he has some kind of like contextual statement beforehand that's then not included.
Oh,
Um,
Rafe has it up.
if you control F for by its very nature, then it comes up.
By its. Yep, not the start of the paragraph. Yep. Not shocking.
So, but it looks like the title is just like totally. Is this the concluding statement as well? It looks like it's the end of the essay.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember
Man,
the stuff about the essay being pretty bad is my recollection from it's been a while, but
that's also like, you know,
this is the last section of the essay.
so, anyway, all right, yep. We know the quote's bad. Or quotating, quotationing is bad. The act was not well
Quoting.
performed.
Okay, so by its nature, CR attracts philosophers who believe in the force of critical argument. Alright, what do you say? Claiming a quality like that is intrinsic to CR is dishonest for a few reasons. Okay, when you say a quality, which quality do you mean?
So attracting philosophers who believe in the force of critical argument.
Okay. Yeah. At first I thought you might mean something else, like about the force of critical argument itself, but yeah, okay, the quality is the attraction.
So one of the things that I was thinking about throughout writing this, and particularly after finding out about misquotation stuff, is how much effort I should put into the quality of this writing, in terms of like, should I make sure that everything is uh, like very robust and none of the interpretations I've made are bad, or am I looking for like dishonesty and false positives are somewhat okay, provided that I've got most of them being like real, as such, like real positives sort of thing, as opposed to false
Yeah,
positives.
I would put the most effort into the Lully material. It got by
Yep.
far the most analysis, and um, I picked it. It was the thing that I picked and I thought would be good for analyzing, not the burner material,
Yep.
which is just incidentally there.
Part of the reason that I wanted to do this first, I mean, not just that the video starts there first, but because I think I'd read this before, but I didn't pay much attention, and I hadn't done any analysis on it, where I had done analysis on Lily's thing before.
Okay, yeah. So this one I think is kind of questionable. Like, yeah, you're not gonna be attracted before you understand anything, but the standard way that happens is you learn a bit about it, and then if you're a particular type of person, then maybe those ideas appeal to you. You're like, ooh, this is the type of thing I like, once you sort of know what it is.
Yeah, I think that would require explanation then about the nature of like critical rationalism as like a meme and its replication strategy. Like it has like a hook
Yeah,
for a particular, and that would
so
then
I
make more
think the
sense. Yeah,
paragraph is underexplained. I don't, I haven't reread it, but I think it underexplains a lot of stuff, so there's definitely a problem there. And
it's hard.
but but you can imagine in sort of general terms that something called critical rationalism is in favor of argument and criticism and so on. So it appeals in some broad general way to people who think argument and criticism and so on are like important and powerful. And
Yeah, I mean, I had to be convinced about that though first. Like Deutsch in BOI first convinced me that criticism was good, and then I learnt more about critical rationalism. Like the hook that got me was about AI. Was Deutsch's like Aeon magazine article. Uh, and I saw that
right.
he recently published a book, and that was when I bought it, and then sat on my shelf for 2 years. Well, I tried reading it a few times, but yeah. So it was sort of like it's interesting in that critical rationalism persuaded me to, um, well, to believe in the reach of good of reasoning and criticism. Um,
Okay, yeah.
as
So
opposed to
intrinsic attractiveness is an issue. People are creative. They make choices. They're not just like controlled by external objects like philosophies.
yep.
I think that's the sort of thing you're trying to get at. Yeah, when people are saying by its very nature, they don't sound very open to debate. I'll agree with you there.
One thing that does maybe concern me is learning that this is the end of the essay. Uh, makes me unsure of how to judge how fair I'm being because I don't know necessarily what's already been said. Um,
Yeah, so
like,
if you wanted to criticize Berner, you'd have to actually review the essay and see if he properly built up to these claims. On
yep,
the other hand, if you want to criticize whoever put it on Facebook with no
that's it.
other text, you can go right ahead without reading anything else.
Yeah,
They are made by people built to be attractive in this. I don't agree with this. I think you can like have design goals A, B, and C, and then one of the results is property D, which could
um,
be a like connected consequence of your actual design goals, or it could be an unintended, like quite tangential consequence. Like there are a lot of ways it could happen. It could also be
yeah. So
modified after the initial design.
yeah, the way I sort of put it is like I agree with you. Emergent properties. So like designing for something to be uh, what do I say? Like yeah, designing something to be attractive is not necessarily good, but if something is attractive because like as an emergent property of like its solid design, then that's okay. That's a good thing, and we shouldn't be surprised when we have that sort of emergence occurring, um, or convergence, or that sort of thing. That's sort of what I'm trying to, or that's what I'd talk about generally with stuff like this. I didn't quite put down that here, but yeah.
Okay, so general comment. Um, Next time, I think you should review your points and then consider how good you think they are. Like you could rate them from 1 to 10 for quality or something, and then that'll give more feedback. Like if I see one that you've rated a 10 and I find a problem with it, that's
Mm,
meaningful. Like whereas if you rate one a 3 and I'm like this isn't great, it's like not a big deal because you already know that. Like if you can tell, then it's not that important. Whereas if there's like a mismatch between how good I think it is and how good you think it is, then there's more of a problem.
yep.
Low mismatches also matter. Like if you rate it at 2 and I think it's an 8, that's also a problem. So you don't want to just like underrate everything to be safe. Go for
y-
accuracy.
Yep.
a different way to think about it that I've brought up with people before, when you make a claim, you should know something like, would I be surprised to be wrong about this? Would that seem like a significant thing I could learn something from, or not? And, you know, the two cases are basically confidence. And if you're wrong, you're gonna, like, you know, update, do a post-mortem, like, take it seriously. It would be, like, notable to you, like, useful evidence. On the other hand, there's the cases where, like, you wouldn't be surprised if it's wrong. If someone points out that it's wrong, you're not going to care that much. You already know about a lot of similar mistakes, you know, that kind of scenario. So they're pretty different, um, from the perspective of the critic, and they're pretty different from, like, the perspective of your behavior, what's going to happen in different
Yeah,
scenarios. And people often are not clear with themselves about the difference between the two, or honest. Like they don't think about which one it is in advance, and then after they get a criticism, you know, they'll retroactively decide it was in the I'm not surprised to be wrong category.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's important to have some, like, advanced
We should
judgments
know up
about
front.
which ones you're confident about.
Yep. I'm just gonna go to the bathroom. Cool.
Yeah, people like to have it both ways because they want to make claims without saying, but I'm not confident, I just threw this out offhand, I haven't really thought about it. You know, they want credit for it if it's right, without responsibility for it if it's wrong. That's pretty common.
Yeah.
Why only philosophers? Let's see. Ah, why philosophers instead of people? So this could be neutral. Um, they could just sort of be thinking any person who is interested in a philosophy qualifies for the term philosopher. Like it could just be, you know, hockey attracts sports players because they like ice. And you're saying sports players instead of people because if they're attracted to hockey, then they count as a sports player. On the other hand, the word philosopher is sometimes a fairly exclusive club, so it could mean more than that.
Mm.
Like I've had people say, "Oh, you're a philosopher? Do you have a PhD?"
I I remember the guy who was like, you're not allowed to say that because you don't have a PhD. And I think I had a response like, it's a good thing that he has a PhD in identifying philosophers, or something like to that effect. Um,
Ah, right. Yes, people
uh,
often make claims outside of their PhD specialty, even if they have one.
I think as well, he was like doing masters in philosophy or something at the time. Whoever sent you that email, but yeah.
There are much worse things in the world.
So I think I actually make a comment like this like 3 times throughout the thing, which I was surprised at looking back at it. But yeah.
But yeah, it makes it sound kind of like a tribe or a fan club or something. Like he sort of presents it in a way like people with a certain bias like it because it fits their bias. And this is from like a CR guy or something, I think, which
Hmm.
is like it's not a very truth-seeking presentation.
Um, so one thing that might be relevant is at this point I went back and added a rule to my plan. So if you click on the like analyzing lies on the left as a topic, like on the topic link, then the last dot point there is what I added at this point. And then I wanted to leave in my biases or things like that. Now, I'm not sure if that's good because it's going to mean that the quality is lower overall, but it sort of provides
Yeah, I
more
think it's
ability to
fine,
reflect.
and I think it'll work well with the grading method or the would I be surprised if I'm wrong method or something. If you just
Yep.
go through and label them, then yeah, that'll solve the problem, I think. The word force is pretty unfortunate to equate with argument as well.
Yeah, I didn't spend too much time on like the word force because you'd already sort of talked about it, so I didn't. I thought it would be more useful for me to try and like find novel things as opposed to doing analysis on stuff that I'm told is a place to look. Like, not that I wouldn't have necessarily seen it, but there's been other stuff that I haven't seen that you've pointed out
Oh yeah, that
in the
was
videos
in
already.
this list here.
Yep. So I usually note them, but then don't expand on them like I expand on other stuff.
Force is a generic word, so it's like it has more than one meaning. Like there's the force of gravity.
So 3 paragraphs down, I talk about the way that that can be dishonestly misused to like create other ideas in people's heads that are not like specifically like correct, but that this is a technique that can be used to manipulate people instead of saying things that are more accurate that don't. And so I think that's even if it's done unintentionally, that's not good. And because there are better words, it shows a lack of care anyway. Yeah, at the very least, a lack of care. Yeah, so this was another spoiled one.
I don't think that let us assume says that it's not his belief.
I don't think it necessarily does, but I think it often is used like that. So, like later on, or the next sentence sort of deals with that idea for me.
Well, he puts the parentheses immediately anyways, so this seems like a bit of an unfair criticism to me. Because he
I
immediately
think
admits that it's something he not necessarily believes is like a proven fact, but it seems pretty plausible to him.
I think it's unnecessary hedging when what he should like he can say, let us assume, like note, I believe this, blah. Like
Yeah.
that's I think a more meaningful thing to say because and then it's okay because you're saying I want to deal with this as a hypothetical. I think it's real, but it's more useful for the purpose of the discussion to talk about it as a hypothetical. And that I think is fine, provided that you follow through on that. But
People
when it's like,
often try to keep themselves out of their papers. That's like a fairly common academic thing. Is you focus on the ideas, not the person. You don't talk about your personal beliefs, which are not relevant. You just stick to here are the ideas, here are the arguments, etc. When they say let us assume, I take it as, for the purpose of my argument, we now need to make an assumption, and then I'm going to show what follows from this assumption, and this will be relevant in some way.
yep.
Which I think is
Um,
okay.
yeah, one thing that I didn't get to in this was that I realized, so before I started this, so I printed out a copy of like the first email you sent or the first few emails you sent, um, and like was just noting stuff with a pen on it. I'll go grab it in a tick. But this does not actually like contribute to the eventual explanation, which is something that had I, not written so much then, I would have put down. I don't think I actually put it into in this thing, but I don't think it's actually a relevant assumption. Like it's uh yeah. Um, It's not
Okay.
like, let's assume A is true, and now we, after some reasoning, we see there's a contradiction, therefore A can't be true, or something like that. I think it's much less meaningful. But yeah,
Yeah. The realistically actually doesn't actually say that he thinks it. It's just he thinks it's realistic, which is different than
that's why.
true.
Yeah. Where a statement like "I think it's true" is unambiguous and I think more meaningful, whereas this is just saying like this is a debatable point, or like it's not strong enough. I think.
Is this a Rick and Morty link?
Yes, it's Jerry
Okay.
coming out of the thing, patting himself on the back. Um,
Okay, so now we have a bunch of text. Personality type with a firm belief in power criticism is less prone than average. Academic to devote resources to social networking and politicking that are needed.
I
He
should have
thinks
quoted less of this, yeah,
he thinks
because
that
I
social networking and academic politicking are needed.
they're
Like
like
he
a
doesn't think they're
necessary
optional.
component.
Yeah, it's a strong
Um,
claim, and
yeah,
he throws it in sort of in the middle, like because his
um,
actual sentence is
it's about ideas.
yeah, like where are the subjects and verbs? Let us assume that. So we have us assume.
So,
Now we have a conjunction.
so
So
I guess,
the type is actually the subject here.
yeah,
With in is. Okay, type is
yeah,
prone than the average to devote resources that we got another conjunction. That so that's also the subject of its own clause. And then R is the verb to create an environment in which is there okay, so then which yeah, so if you look at the key grammatical words, they seem pretty disconnected from what
yeah.
he's saying about academics devoting resources, social networking, politicking, creating environments, power of criticism, like even like personality, it's type of personality rather than personality directly. And
Well, not just that. He like so I have a point about this. Oh yeah, down the bottom with the one and two. So like that paragraph above that, and then those two things. So where he says, yeah, so the paragraph just above that, the type of personality, blah blah blah. It's a comparison between personality types and academics. Like,
Oh,
um,
are you saying there's a grammar error? Let me look at that. Oh yeah, you're saying the type of personality is less prone than the average academic. Yeah, a comparison between a type of personality and an academic. You're right, that's awful.
so yeah, and so I've got two interpretations for that.
Yeah, he means the type of person with a personality that has a firm belief in the power of criticism. It's so wordy.
He might also be doing the second one though, which I think would be bad.
No point about dishonesty, just saying. He probably means the type of person. From an English lit point of view, he's using a technique called synecdoche.
Synecdoche or synecdoche is how I hear people. I've never
Yeah,
been
probably.
certain about it, but yeah, it's a weird word.
A part is made to represent the whole or vice versa. See? I know a really fancy grammar word. Ascendentum. Yeah, there we go. I would generally avoid using them though.
Yeah,
This one came up because I was actually looking into it. It's yeah, it's
yeah.
having a list with no and or before the last element.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's like when you put like etc. or something at the end. Those sort of lists.
Yeah, although those ones don't stand out as much, really. But the ones that don't have an etc. are like a little weird.
So actually, I used an example last night of that to when I was talking to Mum to demonstrate implied words. Um, like when you have something like uh, he moved quickly, purposefully, um, like something like that, where and is implied, and then how you break out the rest of the implied words as well. Another topic that came up that was similar to that sort of like grammar stuff was split infinitives. Um, in that my now that I understand enough to know what they are, I feel like it's like a wanky thing that grammar people talk about to know who the other grammar people are, or the other grammarians are.
By a split infinitive, you mean like this, to quickly eat?
Yes, yep.
That's it. Yeah, I haven't studied this at all, but it seems like the kind of thing grammarians should be picky about, but it's not really a big deal. Similar to ending a sentence with a preposition,
Yeah, yep.
which they like to complain about. But and it's like a Latin rule or something, but I think it's actually okay in English sometimes.
I think it's about the context of the sentence. Like sometimes I find it easier to put like your preposition up front or in particular places to sort of get it out of the way, so you can keep all the important words more tightly together. Um,
My rebuttal.
Yep. So I thought if he was deliberately doing the technique or like doing an English lit thing, then
Right.
there's stuff like social signaling, um, like inappropriate poetic license. I feel like is bad as well. That's the weakest of the four, I think. But yeah,
I thought you were just gonna say that it's like an imprecision more rather than a signaling thing.
I could see it being uh, like I think I used to do that, like put literary techniques in places where they don't really belong. Like, I mean, I might say at the time like for fun or something like that, but it was to signal that I was, smart or intelligent or whatever else.
Yeah, this doesn't look to me like a signaling that people would be able to receive and understand and be impressed by, but I am not adequately attuned to the culture to be really confident of that.
Yeah, I
But
think
my
when I do
first
the
impression is that wouldn't work, and people would
yeah
probably just not notice. I think most people would just not notice. And if they did notice, they'd think it was wrong, probably.
yeah
Okay, so now this part still to read. Right, so we shouldn't be attributing our ideas and our arguments or whatever to personality types. That's rather incompatible with CR, which says we can like learn and let our ideas die in our place and so on.
Yeah, I bring that up later, like ideas dying in our place. Um, that was that was the last of the three things that like upset me a lot. Well, not like a lot. I wasn't like, I had to go spend an hour calming myself down, but it was one of the things that upset me.
I think he's talking about personality because he thinks of the world that way. It's part of his world model that CR did not correct or get rid of.
Yep. Well, that he didn't correct or get rid of. Um,
Yeah, but CR doesn't like directly help with that. It's not like there's a chapter in a CR book that addresses that problem.
yeah, okay. I One of the things that occurs to me is I don't know because of my like the way that I've learnt about CR, I don't actually know that much about the boundary between like CR and the stuff DD's done and then the stuff that's like critical fallibilism, the stuff you've done, the new stuff. So like where
Yeah.
those boundaries are is less clear to me because I don't have that history.
Okay, yeah. So Hopper does not talk about like the tabula rasa stuff, and yeah, he doesn't really get into this stuff. Like he doesn't take sides on nature nurture like DD and I do.
Yep, yep. Yeah, I knew DD did some of it, and there's like his the philosophy criticisms in psychology criticisms in BOI, but I feel like you've taken it further. Like you take that idea more seriously.
Yeah, that's hard to say. DD knows a lot of things he doesn't share. Like I've written all the animal rights stuff. Um, but DD could have at least written some of that if you know, but didn't.
Mm.
So that's not all a knowledge issue. Their personality told them to be. That's a funny way to put it.
Yeah. Well, that's essentially what he's saying.
Yeah, the mindset people have about personalities is bad. It's something objectivism opposes. Not quite directly, like I don't think he explicitly talks about personality types, but um yeah, it is in favor of free will and objects to blaming stuff on our glands and our hormones and what we ate and so on. And our personality is just sort of this innate thing that controls us rather than like our ideas and so on is like pretty contrary to what objectivism is trying to say.
Feels very like old school deterministic sort of thinking.
It's just remembered a quote. Oh, it might be an Alice Shrugged actually. Yeah, wrong book. Nope. Alright, never mind. It'll be too hard to find. There's a lady at a party who.
Is this she's never stolen anything?
No.
No, okay.
I think she's talking to Francisco. Maybe.
All right, not familiar then.
And he asks something like, "Can you prove your case?" She's sort of like, "That's not how I'm wired." Not in those words. But she sort of says like she's not that type of person who can argue things. That's not her personality. It means something along those lines. And she's one of the bad guys you're not supposed to emulate.
Yep.
Oh, I might know what to search for. Refute a word. Huh. Refute a single sentence. Yeah, here it
Okay,
is.
yep.
If you can refute a single sentence I uttered, madame, I shall hear it gratefully. Oh, I can't answer you. I don't have any answers. My mind doesn't work that way. But I don't feel that you're right, so I know that you're wrong. You might be good at logic, but you're heartless, etc. But it's in particular, my mind doesn't work that way is very similar to my personality does or does not work that way.
Yep. It's impossible for me to change. I'm never going to try. You're a fool for suggesting that it's, yeah, no, it's all kinds of bad things.
Well, it's certainly a funny way to talk at a party.
Yeah.
Well, that's in response to this paragraph. When you'll see men dying of starvation around us, your heart won't be of any earthly use to save them. And I'm heartless enough to say that when you'll scream, "But I didn't know it," you will not be forgiven.
That's pretty, yeah, it's definitely a pretty biting comment for a party. I feel like yeah, Ayn Rand's parties are not prototypical though.
This next slide is pretty funny too. If this is the way you feel about the whole thing was he gave a speech about the value of money and how it's the root of all good, not the root of all evil. So if this is the way you feel about money, I think I'm glad darn that I have a goodly piece of the stock of your company.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, objectivism is pretty opposed to the personality stuff. Yeah, he didn't do a good job of actually explaining reasons. He just sort of said people who like X will like CR because it has X in it. Which is like pretty damn hollow. Like he was trying to say that, but what he said it wasn't even quite that, so you could like probably pick some holes in it. But even if he had just made it a tautology as he was sort of intending, then it would be kind of worthless. Like there isn't really any version of that where he's saying something useful. Because either they're the same, so it's pointless, or they're not the same, so he would actually need an argument that he didn't give to link them. This is a bit much. He could have reasons, but like they don't fit this section of the article. Like he might be looking for certain types of reasons in this particular context. He might know
Yep.
some other reasons, he's just not saying them here for some reason. Like wrong type of thing for what he's doing.
Yep. Well, now that we know more about like the fact this is at the end as well, it sort of recontextualizes the whole thing for me.
Firm belief is amplifying the significance. Let's see, what did he say? Firm belief. Personality with a firm belief in the power of criticism. Yep, firm just sounds irrational. Like, why are your beliefs so firm? Popper said to be tentative. So it's.
I mean, I can see people saying that I have a firm belief when they've like, you know, really thought about something. It's super foundational. Like I have a firm belief in the conservation of energy, for example. I'm happy to say that.
I mean, firm sounds like hard to change. I'd prefer a different word.
Yeah, I agree.
Having a solid, almost unyielding surface.
Almost unyielding. Yeah.
That's definitely not the CR choice of words for that kind of thing. Like an objectivist might use it.
Yeah, I could see that more readily.
Yeah, people like to talk about social dynamics a bit and things like networking and politicking in a negative way, but then the same people like go and do it mostly.
Yeah.
Like it takes more than this to actually deal with the problem.
The way I think about it is, well, it's like, so social manipulation is okay if you don't try to do it or you're naturally good at it. But if you aim to like learn about social manipulation, then that's bad. Like, and there's lots of, we could put other words in social manipulate in the place of social manipulation, but um, yeah, that's the general sort of thing there. I think there's some extra like companion ideas that come along, like because of the what do you call it, use of politicking.
Okay, I don't really agree with this. Few issues.
So
One, go
I'm just
ahead.
saying, like, I think that's what society thinks, not what I think, just to be clear.
Oh, okay. I thought that was your thing,
Yeah, no,
but
no.
next.
It's like the way that I think about these criticisms generally is that's the idea behind it, sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay, never mind that. I take it you also disagree with society about this?
Yes, yeah. More increasingly so. Um, in that, like, I've had some criticisms for a long time, um, but they weren't very specific and stuff. And over the past like 3 years, they've become more and more like, yeah, I've just been understanding more and more, particularly the analyzing lie stuff. Like in 2017, it was useful. The How to Train Your Dragon stuff was useful. This is useful. Like every single time, I feel like I'm taking a lot away from it.
Yeah, on a related note, I have on YouTube several videos analyzing song lyrics with social stuff in them.
Um, I've started thinking about that a bit as well. So, Santa Claus is coming to town. I think would be a good one to analyze. Um, Call Me
I did
Maybe,
like modern pop
like
songs.
yeah, like Call Me Maybe, like one of those that came on
Yeah,
for
yeah, that
something
type.
recently. So yesterday, anyway, and that's like I actually think that with the video clip, it could be really interesting to analyze because there's like some weird commentary about like integrity and uh indirection, like social indirection and why it's bad. Um, like the video clip for Call Me Maybe, like tells a story uh of like the girl's taught like she's thought about this so much essentially that she's like written a song about wanting this guy to uh you know give her his number. Anyway, at the end of the video clip, it turns out the guy's gay and he hands his number to like the guitarist in the garage or whatever else. Um, and it's like the guy who she was idolizing, like actually is like honest to his ideas. He like acted on something much more quickly, wouldn't have wasted like hours and hours writing a song or thinking or whatever else. He'd like find that error fast and be able to either move on or do whatever else. It's like there's like I don't think that was intentional in the creation of the video clip. I think it was just a joke, but um it's sort of, yeah, I feel like that might actually be fun to analyze. There might be some stuff in there.
Yeah, that song should have stuff. Like just even the line "Call me maybe" has
Yeah.
meaning to it. This is a song if you want one with social dynamics. This one has a lot. I really dislike this song. I forget if I analyzed it or not, but this song is awful.
I don't know much Taylor Swift, so I don't think I've heard it. Um, where's my VS Code gone? I'm just gonna make a bit of a list of stuff to.
And so if you want a social song, this is my anti-recommendation.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so about naturals. Briefly. A natural mostly means you learned it in childhood, which means people who didn't learn it in childhood are not allowed to catch up later. which is like really fucked up.
Um, so on that note, I was thinking about so when I read Yudowski's Wikipedia page, they call him an autodidactic, and I think it's like an interesting thing to call someone because later in life, most learning that we do, or that people typically do, is like autodidactic in that, like if learning from books counts as that, as not learning from someone, then certainly it matters later in life. But you only ever get called it if you have this like, magic achievement when you're a kid. Um, anyway, yeah, similar sort of things. Like we've got all of these things that uh, they sort of become an exclusive club that you're then like not allowed to be in later on, which I think is stupid.
Oh, I think you can join autodidact later on. My understanding is it mostly means didn't go to college, or at least
I think
didn't
that's a
graduate.
modern interpretation of the um,
Right, but like that's what I think it commonly gets used for.
yeah, okay.
If you drop out before you get your college degree at some point in the school system, that's like a common meaning. Like homeschoolers also will use the term about themselves. It tends to mean like not formal schooling in the standard path.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's not a very exclusive club then.
No, yeah, it's low status. It means you don't have the prestige of being associated with Princeton or whatever.
Unless you're a childhood genius, and then it's like high status because, you're exceeding expectations or whatever else. Well, that's my feeling at least.
Yeah,
Is that this?
yeah. So the natural or unintentional things are like very anti like actually knowing how to learn things on purpose as an adult or even teenager.
Yep.
And it's like anti-book learning, which is nasty. I don't know if you were
Anti-writing
listening
things
to
down.
me earlier today saying books are very, very important.
No, I only caught a little bit of the earlier stuff because I wanted to, yeah, prep and do things.
But yeah, anti-book learning is really bad. Autodidact is somewhat of the same issue because that tends to be people who got a lot of their knowledge out of books instead of like lectures at
Mm.
universities. So it's kind of hostile to books, um, which is unreasonable. Books are really good.
Yep.
But it's because books are not social status gated. You don't have to social network to get access to books, etc. Like they're too egalitarian. Whereas the university
Yeah.
system like keeps the riffraff out. Oh, speaking of riffraff being kept out, I saw today that the US Justice Department, after a 2-year investigation, decided that Yale has been illegally discriminating against whites and Asians in their admissions.
By creating, well, what do they call it? Ah, the positive discrimination thing. There's a term for it. But yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I'm surprised that they made a decision now or like released something now. Though I haven't kept up to date with what the situation is like in the US.
The first response was whites and Asians are a majority of the students at Yale. How could they possibly be being discriminated against? This is ridiculous nonsense. Which I thought to myself, I've literally never run into someone on Less Wrong who's that dumb. I have my problems with the forum, but it's better than that. There's a whole world out there of people who are really, really bad at thinking, and it's important.
One of the things that just occurs to me is like a facepalm moment. Um, so whites and Asians are a majority. Is that together or are they
Yeah,
both majorities?
combined.
Um, but the person would probably like if combined they're a majority, then unless one of them is an exclusive majority, both of them are minorities. So you can make exactly the same statements about whites and blacks excluding Asians or blacks and Asians excluding white. Like, it's trivially broken as a statement. Um,
Yeah,
but
it
anyway,
was
yeah.
definitely broken.
my feeling people would only say that, or someone would only say that if you needed them to be together to make a majority. Like if it was like a, 40-30-30 split or something like that, or like 40-35-25. Um, yeah,
It was something like 45-17.
yeah, okay.
I mean, the real reason he said it is uh, predetermined conclusion in advance
Yes,
of
yeah,
coming up with the reason.
yeah.
Okay, so we were looking at the less prone social signaling side. Pejorative. Oh, Jerry's. Yeah. That isn't pejorative, that's true.
So I don't think pejorative means not true.
Oh, no, I meant it's true that it's pejorative. I was just agreeing with
Oh,
you.
yeah, yeah. Sorry, yep. Yeah, it's just contempt or disapproval.
Yeah, it's not a huge deal. You're not like really attacking everyone. You're sort of attacking the people who he's fooling for being fooled. But yeah, it gets into social dynamics anyways. Okay. Comparison. Yeah, this is a good point. Yeah, average academic.
So I used the wrong quote marks for gifted, by the way. That's a mistake on my part later.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he didn't use the word gifted, is that right?
Yeah, he didn't. I'm putting that in there, so I should have used single quotes if I wanted to refer to it as like a generic concept idea type thing. Well, that's my rule of thumb for dealing with it.
I don't think that's a standard English rule. I don't think that'll be clear to people.
I'm not aware of another way to do it, whereas at least if I'm consistent with double and single quotes, then someone going back and looking at things would be able to know what I meant. So being inconsistent here is particularly bad of me. Um, but yeah, but I don't know a standard way to sort of do it. And I mean, I'm actually inconsistent. Oh, no, I'm not inconsistent above, sorry. In the dot point one above, I use single quotes because it's not quoting him. It's like referring to this as an idea.
It's hard to be consistent about that stuff because you run into cases like nested quotes where you want to alternate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he meant average as in like literally the median. Which by the way, there's a mean
Not
median
average, yeah.
issue because you seem to take it as median, which
I
which
think
kind of makes sense.
um, well, if I was a psychology academic, I'd argue that there's something close to a not very skewed normal distribution and whatever else, blah, blah, blah. I'd retroactively justify it. But yeah, no, that is just a mistake on my part.
Yeah, the mean and median might be similar. But anyways, when he says average, I don't think he's talking about the mean or the median. I think he's
It means
talking
like
about,
prototypical.
yeah, prototypical, representative, archetypical, like what is the normal range? Let's just take all the people between 20th percentile and 80th percentile and call them average and just talk about that sort of group and attribute traits to that entire fucking huge group.
Yeah. Yeah, so I said half of all academics, which means I was talking about the median.
Yeah. Right. Politicking's definitely a thing you could do on purpose if you cared enough.
People change whether they do it from like their work to home. Like on the bus, there's a transition point type thing of mindset, whereas most people wouldn't say that about their personality.
Uh, it depends. Some people just avoid it because they're bad at it, or they're scared of it, or they think they don't know how,
Yep. Yeah, I didn't include that.
or fear
Most
of
people who like,
failure, or like, if you don't compete, you can't lose, kind of stuff.
yeah, I guess the way I'd change it is like relevant, like people relevant to this conversation, um, like who deliberately don't engage in it, probably have deep reasons. Like I think that excludes most of the cases where people don't do it for those other reasons. like lack of
Yeah.
confidence or whatever.
We're low on time, so I'm reading faster now.
Yeah, cool.
Oh, like making them feel efficient, like they're saving their resources by not playing that game.
Oh no, it's like so because like devoting resources, it's not like doing the politicking. It's like, oh, you've devoted resources to doing a thing. So by like removing it from the it's sort of like making it less blameless by adding in direction. So when people do it, they feel more okay about it. Sort of because via this indirection, they're doing more of a ends justify the means
Oh, I
thing.
see. So it
Um,
makes it sound more like a budgeting decision rather than they're just that type of person.
it's in
Is
the
that
yeah,
what
it's
you
in the
mean?
framework of management of like some outcome as opposed to purpose of some action. Um, yeah, so
Okay.
putting it like that makes people feel more okay with it.
This could be cultural. I don't know like what country he's from. It doesn't sound that weird to me, but like, you know, a little non-standard. I don't know when he wrote this either, so it could have been a shift over time a bit.
I feel like it's mostly like lefty intellectuals at university in first year who use that sort of word. Like that's what comes to mind as where I
Yeah,
hear it. I don't
that
hear
is
it much
plausible.
anywhere else.
I don't find it too bad though. Like it's understandable. It just means doing political maneuvering type stuff, doing politics.
Yeah, I mean, considering that I like maintain more than one political party, I feel like not like, and I have heard the word politicking in like actually a political context before. Um, I feel like it's significant that I still immediately go back to, uh, you know,
Okay, so not a common word in politics in your experience.
yeah, not really. There's a little bit, but not much.
So if he said social manipulation, he'd be taking a side like against it. And he's being careful not to do that. He's not really committing himself. He's using standard terms so that they're more neutral and he can be sort of above the fray.
Yeah, so I may be a special case here. I particularly think of manipulation as a neutral thing, um,
Oh,
like
that's yeah,
nuclear
that's not
stuff
standard.
or whatever. Yeah, so that's my mistake in terms of, um, yeah, writing it down like that.
Yeah, intellectual offspring is like it's very biased. Like these are my ideas. It's like possession of ideas. My children.
So
Whereas
yeah, I feel like if there is one really egregious thing, like this is a massive misrepresentation of Popper. Like to say that, I'm someone in critical rationalism or I'm a philosopher who knows about this or whatever else, and then to add that, I mean, it's not, I sort of thought it was more of an introduction paragraph than otherwise, but yeah, I was very unhappy about that. It's also like like implying there's a commitment to your ideas. Like you have an idea, you have to stick with it regardless of whether it's good or not, because you can't like unhave a child. Um, anyway, yeah. So yeah, so that was just the first two lines.
yeah, there's an ellipsis because there's another sentence in the paragraph and it's a multi-paragraph quote.
So yeah, I was thinking about this. I don't think
You're
it was wrong
supposed
of
to
me.
put 4 dots there though, not 3, because
Yeah,
it comes
it
at the
should
end
be
of the
like
sentence.
period and then ellipsis to represent the rest of the paragraph you've cut off. This is one reason I always put square brackets around it because it makes it explicit when I'm adding those dots. Um,
Yeah, I often
uh,
do that.
Also, I misinterpreted the fact that it's one like character, like it's the Unicode ellipsis, to mean that it was like from the original text like that, as opposed to the guy was typing on a phone and like typed it in, and then the iPhone put the ellipsis there or whatever else, which makes more sense now in hindsight. Um, didn't stop me, writing two paragraphs about it though.
People have autocorrect on Macs, Like it defaults to on now, so you got iPhone like corrections on Macs. Most people have that.
Yeah.
Is this a reference, Yorick?
Oh, so that's Hamlet. Basically, it's
Okay.
like mock Shakespeare, which is why at the end it says player bows, as in sort of talking about the idea of like false sorrow and false regret as well. In that I'm essentially implying that by doing this, he's like taking some license to like act something out instead of to be genuine. Um, it's one of the reasons I find it so interesting that I read so much into what was essentially like bad quotation. Um,
Yeah. Mock Shakespeare is social signaling of being cultured and stuff, by the way, so it's similar to some of the things you're complaining about.
yeah, I was so I was thinking about this. It's sort of like fun to play with stuff because it's not something we usually do. But I was wondering about whether to do it. And I think as well, the like making like meta irony sort of comments and stuff is probably not good. Like even in a joking context, I'm not really sure that it's okay. Um, yeah, similar to some of the stuff that I was talking about in tutoring.
Yeah,
Um,
there are issues with it, but be careful with suppression. One of the things you can do instead is labeling, like say you have doubts about it, so people can tell the difference between the ones that you're just saying and like that's just you, and the ones that you like had some awareness, but you still wanted to say it because you partly agree with it or something.
yeah, I don't want to hide the fact that I like wanted to do this. Um,
Yeah,
obviously, I wanted to spend a lot more time in the rest of the article, but it feels like dishonest to like just hide stuff because I feel like other people wouldn't approve of it, as opposed to like I'm fine with like I want it's a big change in my mindset over the past few months. Like I want to express stuff like this now so that I can find it. Like so I don't want to suppress it because if I suppress it, then I get less information about like where it's coming from or what purpose it is. Who am I signaling to? What am I trying to signal? What's going on here? Whereas if I just like let myself do it, then I can sit back at the end and analyze it as like a complete thing that I didn't interfere with as it was sort of going. Um, yeah,
yeah. So for critics, when they see something like this, it's hard for them to tell how serious you are. You might say you were joking or something if they try to argue with it. So they commonly like have to ask a question up front, like, do you mean this? Are you serious? Which
yeah,
already gives you a hint that there's criticism coming, which gives you the opportunity to backpedal in advance before you've committed yourself to anything, is one of the consequences. So it's a lot more awkward for critics, whereas um if you like labeled some of them as like uh you already have doubts about it, then that would help clear up that the unlabeled ones were probably serious and
yeah.
make them
It makes it much more
better
likely, yeah,
targets for criticism.
as opposed to like forgetting the label. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So for next time, I figure you're continuing with this stuff.
Yep. I one important thing, I'm not sure whether I should spend any more time on Burner. Maybe like a bit of a summary or something, but it might be good just to go through the rest of. One problem I found was that I only got to watch like 30 minutes of the video before I had to stop so that I could do the analysis so that I could keep watching and not spoil it. Um,
Yeah.
which is annoying. I might just watch all of the Burner stuff and start focusing on the Luli stuff.
Yeah. I don't know if you've read the whole quote yet, but you could just quickly
Um,
read through it and then carry
oh yeah,
on.
no, I've made so one thing that was funny when I made markings with pen and paper on the printout, I had very few markings on the first paragraph and lots of stuff in the second. And then all of that, like, 2,000 words or whatever, was on the first paragraph. So I know there's a lot more stuff in there, but I'm just not sure if I don't think it's necessarily the best thing to spend time on.
Yeah, that's fine. This quote was not the focus.
Yep. Cool. Okay. See you in 3 days next week.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.